Welcome to the Women Leading Data panel. From AI and machine learning to data discovery and real-time analytics, women are leading the advancement of data technologies. In this panel discussion, we will discuss career paths, overcoming obstacles, blind spots, and leading as a woman. But most importantly, we will discuss how we can raise every woman through words and action and kindness. Our moderator for the session is Stacey Broadwell, a brand ambassador for LinkedIn Local in Los Angeles. She will be interviewing our panelists. Aarthi Sridharan, Senior Director, Data Insights and Analytics at Beachbody. Anita Sengupta, Chief Product Officer and Co-Founder at Airspace Experience Technologies. Carmen, Honacker, Senior Manager, Global Fraud Strategy at Sony PlayStation. Elizabeth Owen, PhD, Director of Learning and Data Science at Age of Learning. And Lacey, Plache, VP of Data at Patientpop. So the panel session, we have roughly like 85 minutes remaining. We'll open up the floor for questions to the audience at approximately 5 p.m., give or take. So we encourage you to take photos and post to social media during the panel, but if you could take this time to silence your phones. Thank you. I'll now hand over the mic to Stacey to start the panel.
Welcome everybody to Women Leading Data. My name is Stacey Broadwell. I'm the brand ambassador for LinkedIn Local. I also am the CEO for Tech Recruit. We're a conference that trains talent acquisition and recruitment professionals on how to use technology and innovation to attract and hire talent. So you can find out more about that, techrecruit.io. What inspired me and what I was most interested about today is helping all of us learn about how to be kick-ass bosses. And I was inspired by a book called Radical Candor. Quick show of hands, who here has heard about this book or read it? Has it inspired you? Another quick show of hands, who here leads teams? Awesome. I myself, as an entrepreneur, had my own challenges in leading teams and communicating with them. This book for me was life-changing. So I wanted to get a panel of leaders here today to talk a little bit about their experiences, how they lead, how they build teams, how they hire, how they offer criticisms, and how they build everybody as a team. So let's get started. I'm gonna go ahead and actually pass the mic down and have you guys just talk a little bit about your company and what it is that you do.
Hi everyone, my name is Lacey Plache. I'm the VP of Data at Patientpop. Patientpop is a healthcare technology company located in sunny Santa Monica, 2 blocks from the beach. We provide a technology solution for doctors and other healthcare providers. Basically, our tools and software enable them to not worry about the marketing, but we provide a full package where they can acquire patients, retain patients, manage their online reputation, be present for people who are looking for doctors. I lead the data team, and we are engaged in data in every part of the company for all departments, and in particular, we're focused on our own customer acquisition and retention, as well as how to optimize our products.
Hi, I'm Liz Owen. I'm in data science leadership as well as learning science for complex digital environments. I am currently the founder and chief data scientist at Learning Data Discovery. It's a consulting business to support learning and data science digitally. I'm also an advisor and board member at Age of Learning, where I support educational data mining and learning analytics efforts. Age of Learning, for those of you just coming in, it's an educational game company that supports really high quality educational content for young learners. The most recent thing we launched was Mastering Math, which is an adaptive game-based learning tool. And students can dive into a world of fun games and math learning that's personalized to their needs.
Hi, I'm Anita Sengupta. I am an aerospace engineer. I have a company called Aerospace Experience Technologies that's not based here in Los Angeles, actually, although I am. It's based in Detroit, but I work remotely. And we're working on the development of electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. I spoke about it this morning at the keynote. Obviously, we are a hardware development company, so our focus isn't on data specifically, but in order to be able to support the mobility as a service model, which is what we couple to in terms of our industry, we use data analytics to figure out where to set routes and where would be most interest for someone. And happy to be here. I'm also a professor at USC in the astronautics department, so close to home.
Hi, my name is Aarthi Sridharan. I am the Senior Director of Analytics, Data Insights and Analytics at Beachbody. I bet if I say Beachbody, you might be thinking, what's this company? I don't know. How many of you have heard about Beachbody? Oh, there you go. Usually, if I say the products, people will recognize the products more than the company itself. We are the makers of P90X Insanity, which is home fitness videos to help people live a healthy lifestyle. And in addition to that, people don't know that we also have another business unit called, which is the multi-level marketing business unit. So people who have used our products are so interested and they motivate others and they become coaches and they sell our products. They are resellers as well. So and my particular team, me and my team, work on the insights and analytics to help build reporting needs, serve reporting needs, and also visualizations and analytics needs of the company, so that the leaders can make a decision based on data. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carmen Honacker. I'm leading the global fraud prevention strategy for Sony PlayStation. I don't think I have to explain what PlayStation does, I hope not. And I'm also on the global board of directors for the Merchant Risk Council, a nonprofit organization that helps companies and financial institutions fight cybercrime and global fraud threats.
Thank you everybody for, thank you everybody for that. So this panel is all about how to be a boss, right? How to lead and how to have communication. All of that we'll get into, but initially I want to start with hiring and what that looks like. And when you are looking for, when you're hiring and you're interviewing and you have specific qualifications that you're looking for, because this is going to build the culture of your team and enable you to be a kick-ass boss. What is it that you might look for?
So I'm hiring a lot. Been hiring a lot for a while, but definitely hiring some more. And one of the really important things for me is about the team culture. You know, people often ask me in the interviews, what's your team culture like? What do you value? For me, I value people who are collaborative, people who are curious, people who are self-starters, really motivated, and people who really care. You know, I want to hire people who think that data is just the coolest thing ever, and they're looking to take our data, generate some cool insights, build some great databases, create some amazing models, and really take that and generate insights that the business can do something with. So for me, it's also important to have a balance of personalities. You know, I'm not looking for everyone to be the same. I want them to be balanced in how they approach things. So you have your introverts, your extroverts, your people who are more thoughtful, your people who make fast decisions, and you know the wheels just turn very rapidly. So it's really important to balance that. And then the other thing too is diversity of experience. I'm not looking for everyone to come from the same cookie cutter mold. And I've found some of my best hires over the years have been from unexpected places and unexpected backgrounds. And you know, I really value that. I'm not going to throw your resume out because you didn't follow the traditional path.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that hiring people and not skill sets is really important. So someone can come in that doesn't fit a mold, that has some of the skills we need, but may bring something else that we didn't expect and we want to be open to. And so I'm a big believer in people coming in and kind of even shaping the position according to their skill set and passion and personality. I feel like the job description it's a conversation starter. I also think it's important for people to have passion for what they do, you know, both data, but also, for example, at Age of Learning in the world of educational games, I do look for people it's not a requirement, but I look for people that love games and really believe the power of games to transform. As a passion, yes, but also as a source of insight.
I think you all hit the points which I wanted to mention, right? Like it's kind of the common denominator. A team player, a person could be, could have an excellent skill set, but if the person is not working with a team, it's of no use, right? So it's that's kind of the key thing which I would be looking for as well, and the attitude, right? Can-do attitude is very important too. And the other thing is with technology and mainly with technology, it's changing every day. So the openness to learn new things and the curiosity to learn and ask questions is a key thing that I would be looking for. And also I liked what she touched upon. It's when you hire people, we do this whole brain exercise as a team, which is kind of cool because and now it's funny, we talk this language. It's like, who's red, who's blue? Oh, we want to have a team where people's personality are kind of mixed up. So as a team, we are skilled in various different angles, right? We don't want to have the same personality in everyone having the same personality in the team, and we want different colors, as we say, in the team, so that we could, wholly, we can bring in all the competencies.
I think I can actually give a pretty good example of how I hire, because the first thing I did when I started at Sony is I changed the job descriptions because I thought we sucked. What I did is I absolutely removed any type of degree requirement, and then I put in the first paragraph where we talk about what Sony PlayStation is, the following sentence. The person must be passionate about gaming or the brand. They have to be honest to a fault, have a high sense of integrity, and care deeply about other human beings. If you do not fulfill these requirements, you will not make it into our team, because we also have, as a team, certain values that we proudly put on a giant Sony TV above our area, and those are, we are kind, we have each other's backs, we care about each other, we are honest, we have fun, and we are passionate. These are the things that I interview for, and actually also interview for other people, because, so I run the strategy, and the strategy is a bit of a not so tangible thing in the sense that I lead the vendor selection processes, I write business requirements for our fraud platform, our fraud tools, and all that. These are things that I have done for over 10 years, which means I can teach them to you. But I can't teach how to be a decent human being. And for that reason, we hire for who you are and not so much what you know. Unless you join the data science team or our software development team, then obviously you have that. But we have, as a team, collectively agreed that a degree, especially when you're coming from an Ivy League school, or the way you dress at your interview, is not what necessarily will get you in. But if you have heart and you care and you're passionate and kind and sweet and humble, I will take you into my team anytime.
Thank you. Yeah. A lot of that is all about your culture when you're looking for hiring and how you assess those people who are going to join your team. There's a few things that I think kind of came up, and I wanted to address those. In leading a talent acquisition and recruitment conference, I speak to every recruitment talent acquisition professional at every major brand. And what I found is there's a lot of different ways to hire, and there's a lot of different advancements and new technologies that are happening within HR technology. A lot of companies are using assessments, advanced technologies, and applicant tracking systems and AI for their hiring. Also, you mentioned about the job descriptions, and job descriptions are something that are changing because companies are putting in those job descriptions, not just skill sets, but what companies or professionals, the candidate, the employee, are going to be doing in the first month, the first 6 months, and the first year. And those expectations then tie into those performance reviews later. And it's how companies that have been able to streamline that process, that interview and hiring process. So some really cool stuff going on. I'm curious, are there any technologies or assessments that you might use in your hiring process?
Sure. So as a technology department, we recently did the DISC personality assessment ourselves because we wanted to understand that this assessment talks about how you communicate, what your interacting style is, and basically it divides along a couple of different axes. One, whether you're thoughtful versus whether you're fast-paced and how you approach decision making. And the second one would be whether you're more task-oriented, more results-oriented, or you're more people-focused in how you approach things. There are four different categories of where you can land, and this gave us a really good idea of our existing team and where our gaps were and where our strengths were. So now when we're hiring, we're having conversations. We're not officially rating our candidates, but we are thinking about what are the qualities of people that would be someone to fill in that hole that we have, that weakness, where we don't have as many people with that set of personality traits. And so it's really infiltrated both how we talk about our candidates or how we talk about each other, but also how we talk about who we're bringing in to really complete the skill sets that we have.
For example, Age of Learning didn't use a formal personality assessment, but normally there was a performance task that would be given to prospective employees, and that is interesting because it allows people to creatively problem solve, and not everybody has the same answer to every problem. And it's really a nice opening into a thought process around how people approach things and where they see the biggest application of results and things like that. I've been in environments where things like the Myers-Briggs and personality tests were used to kind of understand the types of people coming in and how to complement one another, and I think that could be useful as well.
Well, I'm going to go on a limb here and say I'm 1,000% opposed to personality tests, and unfortunately there's a large history of this information being used to discriminate against people based off of race and based off of gender, not because the test is inherently flawed, but the people who interpret it are not psychologists, and so they don't know how to use the information. So I don't agree with them at all, but that's just me. So most of my career was at JPL for 16 years, and none of that was ever used. And the teams that were built there were some of the most sophisticated in the world. So I just don't think it's necessary.
In our company, we do whole brain exercise and the DISC profiles. Actually, it is done more like a team building exercise in our environment, and it has been positive in our case. And it's fun because again there are different colors and it just says what you're inclined to. Like for example, blue is more process oriented, green is more analytical, and then red is like more people, and yellow is more strategic thinking. So now when because we did this as a team, we kind of talk to each other in language and color coding and say, oh, you don't, okay, let me be more blue because I'm talking to you, you're leaning towards blue. So it kind of helps, and to what Lacey said, it kind of helps us to figure out as a team how we are organized. And one thing is like it helps us to figure out the strengths and like what we are lacking, like when we are recruiting, we want to kind of compensate. The other thing is it has helped very well with the communication within the team. With the existing team, because we kind of understand, when we did that as a team, we kind of understand the other's personality a little bit more, so it helps in communication a lot, and we try to explain it, and we kind of joke around it, as I said, like saying, oh, you're blue, you're green, so let me talk to you in that color. So I think in our case it has helped us, but I do respect her opinion.
I would argue that, I would say that the most of you probably can guess what I think about personality tests. We have in Sony done actually quite a few of them, but we do them for fun. We don't pay attention to them. What we do in our interviewing process is interesting. So for the security org, but the thing is, my boss knows what motivates me. And we talked about Myers-Briggs. Yes, that was actually used as a fun thing because I fall into the category with Gandhi. And I care very little about recognition and titles and money and achievement, but I care so much about people. And that allowed my boss to actually teach me, coach me, and lead me in a way that speaks to me and is important to me. And through extensive work, we have found out our love languages and how to speak to bring the best out of each other. My girls, this was by accident and a little by design. I have an all-women's team. They know everything about me. And I know everything about them. I know what school they went to, how they grew up, what competitions there were with siblings. And it's a really interesting thing because I think that our assessment of people is so much better because we assess based on really knowing them and getting to know them and caring about them. And I think it's different. So I took DISC, for example. It was the worst test I've ever taken because it was so far off that I had nothing in common. That's when the person who took the test or gave it said, "You must have cheated because your results are all over the place and you're inconclusive." And I'm like, that's how I felt on that day, you know. So I think that you can learn and assess by having as many different types in your interview process. And we do have the very thinking, cerebral people in there. We have the touchy-feely like me in there. And it works really well in assessing who a person really is on all of their being, their heart, their soul, their mind, their intellect, and all of that.
Thank you, Carmen. Being here today, and I've been here since early this morning and had conversations with many of you coming up to our booth and asking questions and asking for advice. And one of the things that I remember somebody said that they have been interviewing and that they found that they were giving lots of tests and they feel like it was more than normal. And and I was reminded of the fact that in interviewing, it's very competitive in the technology market right now to get a job. And there is a huge influx, and I think it's important to know this, of technologies for HR. HR technologies is an emerging and exploding field. So there are tons of companies out there who are selling HR technologies to companies, whether it's AI, whether it's predictive hiring, whether it's the brand new applicant tracking system, assessment tests, facial recognition. It's just, there's a lot of that going on right now. It will reduce, bigger companies will eat it up, but I just wondered if anybody else was kind of maybe experiencing that, where they're getting lots of tests or something. That might attest to it. Okay, so moving on, I want to talk a little bit about, since we talked about hiring and how you find that talent, maybe we talk a little bit about how you manage your own teams, because again, this is about being a boss, right? So, in Radical Candor, and again, I might refer back to this book because I was really influenced by it and inspired. They talk about two people that you'd find on your team. And Carmen, I'm going to start with you because it was the superstar and the rock star and the different elements of the achiever, driver, connector, and stability within those teams. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, the concept was really new to me and really interesting. You have basically two types. You have the superstars. They are very, very fast-driven, fast-paced. They want to get as high up the ladder as possible, as quickly as possible. They're also very easily bored. And in the personality construct that so needed, those would be the achievers. Give me the high visibility projects, challenge me all the time, and give me stuff that is sexy and great and give me exposure. And then you have the rock stars, which are your solid people. They don't necessarily have an ambition to climb the ladder. They love what they're doing. They want to keep doing it. Maybe they want to perfect it, and they're on a much longer, slower trajectory. And the thing about both of them is you can actually switch. So at some point in your career, you may be a superstar, at other times you may be a rock star, and it's up to your to the manager to figure out where you're at and then how to match the projects that you're giving them as well as the challenges that you're giving them for that specific mindset. At Sony, they identified 5 personalities of leadership. There is ownership. Those are the people that want to sit in a corner and do their job, don't like micromanagers. Give me the thing, I'll handle it, I'll take care of it. I do it great, and I bring you the finished product. You have the achievers, me, myself, and I. Look at me, and if this project is not giving me exposure, then I don't really want to work on it. You have drivers. Those are the people that are very squirrel-like. Oh, this is a great project. I'm going to take it. They are not afraid of challenge. Very driven. The problem with them is they don't necessarily want to finish it because they get easily distracted by shiny object over there. You have the connectors. Those are the people, and they said those should actually be the people who should lead others because they're the, let's all come to an agreement together. They're your empaths, the people that deeply care, the people that are very caring and kind and much more hard people than the problem with the connectors is they are horrible in self-promotion and they don't network very well because for them it's always about others and never about them. And lastly, you have stability, and those are the people who want to come in and do their job. They're the ones who say, really don't like change all that much. They don't want to necessarily see a whole new trajectory or a whole new path, but they're also the ones who will say, hey, if we're going down this path, there's a risk that may happen with this, and they're the ones that are risk adverse and will go, maybe we should take our time and be more careful. And what they pointed out is, when you take a look, at least in our company, guess who actually dominated the leadership ranks? The drivers and the achievers. Stability had 5 poor people out of a group of 80, and the connectors were the second lowest, and the rest, and this is where actually HR came in because HR led that, and they said, when you interview, try to figure out where they may fall because it's absolutely right, you don't want an imbalance.
That is definitely where HR technology is trying to be better. Yeah, that's interesting. So, anybody else have experience in those team management sort of styles? Anita, I see you nodding.
Yes. Very simple question. Star Trek or Star Wars? I just, but I do ask you that question. I'm a Star Trek person.
Which one are you?
Star Trek. Big time. No, actually, I learned something really early on in my sort of management leadership training. I took situational leadership training, which I love and I use to the very day, and it based people off of their ability to do the task. So you could be a 22-year-old person right out of college, doesn't know anything, and you need a lot of motivation, a lot of training because you have very little experience to do the task. But then you could also be a 60-year-old person who's working on something they've never done before, who's in that same exact situation because they don't know how to do the task. So I actually really like that model, and it goes based off of your knowledge to do the task and how much motivation you need, and eventually you get all the way over to the side where you know what you're doing, you don't need that much motivation, and you can be delegated to. So I'm a real fan of that particular one.
I actually want to add this adds into behavioral data science for games. So you have a lot of player types. Starting in the 90s, Bartle defined 4 player types based on some interviews. Probably 8 interviews with people. Which was fine. It was groundbreaking at the time. No, I'm not trying to be. It was very groundbreaking, and there's been a lot of research since. Nikki from Stanford has done a lot of sort of data-driven work on that. Well, and a lot of what has been found is that there's dynamic behavior types over time. That one person isn't one thing throughout, and just shifting between superstar and rock star. And so I think my comment on this stuff is it is really important to understand the kind of person that you're bringing in and try to get balance, and that these typologies are just one data point, and that those change over time. And so a lot needs to be said, I think, for gut instincts. That may be counter to everything that's been said so far, but I think your instinct about how this person would fit on the team and their sense of dedication is also just a really key.
Question is the why. So so let's take the youngest one. She's 26 years old. She can dance circles around me intellect-wise. The girl is brilliant, and I very much proud myself of the fact that I hire people that are smarter than me. And she tells me, I want to be a senior VP. And I'm like, that's not a job, that's a title. But tell me, what do you want and why? And as I kept pushing her, because she kept saying, I want to have our CISO's job, finally we got to the point where she said, I really want to make a difference for other people. I want to lead them because I think that I want to make sure they know that they can do it and they can achieve things and they can succeed in what they do. And I want to teach how to code, and I want to teach them how to, do things and kick ass. That, in my opinion, was who she is. And that is why she wants to be the senior VP, because she would have the voice. So I think these tests and all that and all of these personality types are fun, but they tell you.
Anybody else want to add something? Lacey?
Add one thing. I think one thing that's really important is understanding who you are personally and what you value. Because too often you can look for people who are just like you. You know, if you're the superstar type who's always, looking for growth, looking to move up the learning curve, build the next coolest thing, that's going to be, without subconsciously, who you're attracted to. But you can't build something without having the people to keep the lights on. The people who really know, for instance, they really know your data, they really understand the models that you built, and they're able to look at them and say, okay, what can we do with this now that we've built it? What kind of insights can we draw? How can we use this in our business? And so I think as a leader, you really have to be aware of where are my biases and how do I make sure that I'm not unbalancing my team because of who I am and where my strengths are. And that's a challenge.
I was just gonna say that's a challenge. It's such a challenge, right? So that's interesting. We're talking about building teams. We're talking about how you recognize the certain personalities on your team. And we talked about, Carmen talked about the achiever models and the 5 personalities that they recognized at Sony and PlayStation. And Anita talked about the situational ability, and Elizabeth talked about gut. Lacey talked about, eliminating biases. And when you are hiring professionals, and I just want to put a little bit of imposter syndrome here, because I think we're talking about being able to take that next step. And when I first heard this term, imposter syndrome, I thought about myself. I have a 2 and a 5-year-old, and I took 4 years off, and I'm coming back into my career, and I can't do this. And you know what? It's not just women, it's men too. And it's the feeling of, I don't know, I've never done this before. But when you look at situational and you look at your performance of what you've done before and how it got you to this point, you have to have confidence that you could do the next job. Okay, let's move on. Love you guys. Okay. Let's talk about managing your team. So we have your team. Let's talk about how you manage your team. You have your rock stars, you have your stability people, you have your people that you have those gut instincts with, and maybe you have people who aren't doing so well, and you have to be able to have candid conversations with them. Does anybody want to share maybe how you might approach a criticism of somebody who's falling behind? Let's start with you, Lacey. And then we'll go to Carmen.
Okay. Yeah, so this is something that's come up, and it's never the place you want to be, right? Where you've hired someone, you've invested in them, you believed in them, and then they're not performing up to where they should be. But I think the way that I approach my team is that they know that my goal is for them to succeed, both for our team to succeed, but also for them personally to succeed. And they know that I have their backs. And so once you've established that kind of trust, it makes it easier to have a conversation where you say, lately, or this thing happened, and it just wasn't where you could be. And I think that the key for me is to point out, I believe in you, and I know you can be so much better. So let's identify something didn't quite go as it went, as we would have liked it to, or maybe you aren't performing to where you should be or could be. And then we talk about how do you get there? What are the ways to improve? And because we have the trust, my hope is that people don't come away feeling that they've been, bashed upon or criticized, but rather that they have someone to support them. Because often you start talking to people and you realize there are other things going on. It's not just what's happening in the workplace. There's something else that's, happening, and then you can be supportive in a, in a broader sense as well. Carmen? Somebody have a...
So the book For Radical Candor talks about challenging directly and caring personally. I challenge my team all the time, every day, good, bad. So the feedback that they're getting is constant, and it's predominantly good feedback and strong feedback about things they do well, but also about things when they don't do so well or when they say something. An example I want to give was the brilliant, well, they're both brilliant, but the younger one prides herself on trolling, which means that she interrupts me quite often with weird and bizarre jokes and says something funny, so she thinks. And the book talked about an example where Kim was given a presentation. Her boss asked her how the presentation went. She said, "Oh, it went great," and her boss said, "I absolutely agree," and she gave her like really great feedback, and then she said, "By the way, you say a lot." And Kim said, "Oh, I know," and she dismissed it and did like she shoot off a fly. And she says, no, you really do say a lot. And again, she dismissed it. And Cheryl looks at her and says, "Kim, when you say a lot, you sound really dumb." Now, notice that she didn't call her dumb, she called the action dumb. But an interesting thing happened. When she gave that radical candor, Kim was now aware from that moment. She got a speaking coach and pretty much stopped using because it was right there. And that's what I did with Marianne. So we were in a team meeting and I told her, when you present, you speak so fast, it's hard to follow you, and you interrupt a lot. And she did exactly what Kim did. She goes, "Oh, I know." And I said, no, I mean, you do this a lot, and the trolling part is at times a bit much. And she goes, "Oh, it isn't." And I looked at her and I said, "Marianne, when you troll people and constantly interrupt them with jokes, you sound very immature. And if you want to be a VP, then you have to learn how to be a little bit more serious when you have serious conversations with people." And she looked at me and she said, "You cut me deep." You cut me very deep. And then we laughed about it, but that feedback she gets, both of them get all the time. It's good, it's indifferent, I hate bad. But so they're no longer shocked, they're now desensitized. And they no longer see it as, "Oh my God, she just told me I'm immature." They know that I very deeply care about them, and that makes it okay to tell them all the time where they're at. And it's exactly how Lacey said, when there is trust in a relationship of care, you can tell them this wasn't your best thing, and you know what will happen. They will probably look at you and say, "Yeah, you're right," and not try to make excuses. I think the only time people get defensive is A, if you never give them negative feedback, B, if you are the type of person say you did this really well, but, because they know, oh God, there's the but. And they also know that positive reinforcement always comes with a negative. And C, if you're mean. If those three things happen, then people get defensive, but if they're getting their feedback all the time, then it's a different story, and I know you had.
Yeah, I think you both touched upon the key things, right? The one thing is trust. Like when you establish that trust, people actually appreciate you giving that feedback, because oftentimes, based on my my experience, 90 to 95% of the time, people don't realize they are making that, or they don't realize it, and that's like the major reason. And once you point that out from your perspective, they are like, "Oh, I didn't even realize it." So that is often the case. The other thing, which I believe and is what Carmen talked about, which is like being candid and just tell them and without sugarcoating it, right? Like, I mean, not necessarily being rude, and I truly appreciate it. The third thing which I think I believe is frequent feedback, right? Like, just when it happens, you know, get hold of them and tell them what happened, and just being specific so that it's fresh in our minds, they could relate to it, and just by being specific, they can clearly understand. They don't have to figure out, they don't have to read between the lines, it's very specific. I think that helps too.
Anybody else have a comment on being direct or leading, giving criticism?
Yeah, I think a key is it's not personal. It's, you know, and B, it's not good or bad. The question is it serving you? And if it's not, then, you know, let's work together to change it. I think there's also a sense of self-awareness as a boss. So I think when you run a team and, you know, someone isn't performing, being aware of your own triggers around that, like if you know, I mean, just being aware of your own insecurities, and, you know, imposter syndrome is a thing. And knowing that everybody has it and choosing to acknowledge it but not act from it. I mean, there's a sense of wanting power out of insecurity. Like, power will solve all my problems. I just want to eat power, and then, like, there's a reason that never fills the void, right? But, you know, wanting leadership for the right reasons is different, and that takes some self-awareness. And so the more self-awareness you can harness as a leader, I think that makes those conversations easier, because your employees sense that you're being honest with yourself, and therefore you're able to be more honest with them, and they can be honest with you. And I think communication, oftentimes I think, you know, quote unquote poor performance often comes down to bad communication. Maybe I didn't touch base with you enough. You know, like, what can I do as a leader that helps, you know, support? And also, you know, people go through stuff. So, like, well, my pet of 14 years just died. Okay, that's all I need to know. You know, let's move through it, and we'll work what works best for you. So I think there's some elements there to consider in terms of self-awareness and framing it like, hey, is it serving you, not good or bad, and the foundation of trust.
So I would say, just from a very specific instance of one of the teams that I led when I was at JPL, one of the people on my team actually was a friend of mine, which made it even more awkward because I was trying to put him in a position where he could grow beyond what he had done before. So there's two tools, I guess, that I would use. One is quiet hours. So for anybody who worked directly for me or who's in a significant leadership role on my mission, we would have a quiet hour either once a week or every other week, and it was just me and the other person. We could talk about anything, from how they were feeling to any issues that we're having, any resources that they need. But when it got to the point where it was beyond something like that, and it was getting to a point where the person wasn't able to maybe perform a part of their function, figuring out how to help them, either getting them a mentor, getting them specific training, or when necessary, to not have them do that function and to change that function. Because ultimately, you want each member of your team to feel empowered and successful, and give them the tools to do their job.
I find all these conversations so helpful. I thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience here. When I first launched my own agency at 32, I stepped into a leadership role without being a leader. And I found myself going home and saying, why aren't they performing? And I would look at myself and I'd get down on myself that I wasn't a good leader. And I probably wasn't. I was maybe setting too high expectations, but having that courage to be direct and do it from a place of caring was something that I didn't quite know I could do. I didn't have that sort of an conversation that's how you do it. But also I felt that those vulnerable conversations that you have about somebody's home life remained at home. Like, this is just business. Don't take it personally. This is, that was professionalism. And it wasn't until I heard about Brene Brown, Brene Brown, Power of Vulnerability, that I was just like, oh, you can be vulnerable in business. And then taking on top of that radical candor on how to actually have those conversations to enable teams. And that communication is so critical. So maybe I wonder anybody wants to share about maybe how you go about having those conversations, because like, how do you have conversations about, you know, people's personal lives, and like, you know, can you cross that line? Is that okay?
So we, Sony has a motto when you walk into our lobby, it says bring your whole self to work. And Kim talked about that. And you know, for the first time in my entire career, I felt relief, because I had crossed that line so many times. I became a manager for the first time in 2002. And I was a lead, I wasn't a manager yet. And one of my employees came in with a swollen face that was black and blue, and I thought she had been in an accident. And I pulled her in a room and I said, what happened? And she said, my husband beat the shit out of me. Now, I lived that. My dad was that guy. And guess what I did? I took her, I said, you're not going back home to him. And I had a guest room and I took her home, and my boss said, I can't do that. You're crossing a line here. And I said, you know what? I have a feeling. Let's make a deal. If she's unable to perform, you can demote or fire me. But if her performance improves, you owe me an apology. And guess what? Her performance soared, because she no longer had to live in fear of going home to an abusive husband. Now, these conversations we had in our leadership team, my boss, my peers, and my team know how I grew up, know what abuse I've endured, know everything about me. I never asked them to share in return, but I told them my unconscious bias is, for example, towards achievers, because I'm a connector and I care about people and I can't stand people who make it all about them. So call me on it when you notice that. Or I would have a conversation with one of them where I said, my feelings were hurt because you didn't even give me credit when you were asked how you ended up in this role. And an interesting thing happens, and I think that happens as being humans. As you are authentically sharing who you are, people will share authentically back. Because the only reason we tend to be on the fence is quite often because, well, we A, haven't established that relationship, and B, we don't want to be the first. So I never ask for anything in return, but I'm always transparent, including my shortcomings. And it opened the door to something that happened at my last performance review, where the other girl, Jessica, who came from the FBI, who I perceived as a it's all about me person, said, you haven't announced my promotion. I had promoted her. And she's always very business, no emotion. And you know what? She started crying. And she told me how her brother had always gotten the spotlight, how none of her achievements were ever acknowledged or ever even mentioned, and for that reason she's an overachiever, and I felt like an asshole because I had been that person who denied her the recognition. And you know what? I'm like, that's on me. That will never ever happen again. But in that moment, I got why she is who she is, and I wrote the glowing letter of review of why I promoted her.
May I just pause for a moment? I want to, if I could get a show of hands, how many here have had a manager they felt have cared deeply about them? That's incredible. How many of you in leadership roles feel like you have had these conversations with your employees? Wow. Aarthi?
Well, I think like being empathetic is the key, right? We are all human beings, and she touched upon like the human aspect of it. It's very important, and it depends on the person too, right? If they don't, you know, as she said, if they don't want to be talking about it, that's their choice.
Maybe 80s Gordon Gekko corporate culture, there's a sense of I am what I do, and frankly that's just not true. Who we are and our experiences and the conversation we had with our partners that morning all play into how we behave and what we value. So even people, so I've been the leader of a data science team and managed data engineers and data scientists and learning scientists and researchers in the whole ecology of people. Let's just say abstractly, perhaps there have been data engineers that feel, that I've worked with that feel that they are what they do and their work. And they're incredibly driven to do things a certain way. But the lack of recognition of I'm doing this because is a really scary thing, because when you don't recognize your own motivations, they completely control you and you have no choice in the matter. So I think as a leader to recognize we are whole people and what we do for our profession is influenced by who we are, what our desires and fears are, and what we ate for breakfast that morning. I mean, try having like a chorizo omelet when they're coming into work. But it's all relevant, and I think to acknowledge that as leaders is super important. And I also never ask my people to share anything. Instead, I try to be transparent and then allow space for that. That being said, the boring sort of convention of have one-on-ones regularly with your people, I think that is actually very important. So I set that aside at least once every 2 weeks to just have time to chat about anything, and that seems to help as well.
I think we're at the 5-minute mark, maybe. So we'll end it with maybe one last question. We'll turn it over for Q&A. Is that right? I want to talk about mentorship programs, because I think these are so important and so critical for companies. And I know maybe some of you do them and some of you don't. Lacey, you mentioned that Patientpop does mentorship programs. You want to tell us about that?
Yes. So the mentorship program that we have in the technology department at Patientpop is actually my own baby. We have a flat org, or it's evolved a bit over time, but when I started it was very much a flat org. And while everybody really liked the opportunity to have more career growth and really have the flexibility to join projects and seize opportunities, the one thing people universally agreed was missing was there was no manager to really turn to and help them grow their careers. Like nobody really owned that responsibility. And on the flip side, those of us who were in lead positions felt that gap, that we as leaders wanted to provide that for the people on our teams. Like we cared about their careers. We wanted to be there to support it. So the program I created, it's very simple. Everyone in the department gets a mentor. Whether you want one or not, you have one available. You don't have to talk to them ever, but they are there if you should ever want to. You got to pick who you wanted. If you didn't pick, then you could also, or if you didn't know who to pick, you could say what your interests were in terms of career growth, and we would pick for you. We being me and the other couple people who put the program together. And if you didn't pick it all, again, we would, based on what we knew about you, match you up with someone that we thought could help you in your career. Simple, every quarter you meet, you define your goals. Here's where I want to go, not the senior VP 20 years from now, but in the foreseeable future. What's my next milestone? Where do I want to get to? But then importantly, what can I do this quarter to grow on that path? Identify 2 or 3 goals, and then identify opportunities within the job you have where you can go and start working toward those goals. And then we also encourage the mentors to work with the team leads, if the team lead is not the mentor, to help the mentee find the opportunities. And then you meet a couple times during the quarter, you talk about your progress, and then at the end of the quarter, you have a retro. How'd I do? And again, it's being held accountable, having someone who knows what you're trying to do, who will help you think about, well, how do I get this done? Because some things, if you want to learn Python, it's pretty easy to go online and figure out how to teach yourself Python. It may be a little harder to find a project where you can apply it. And there are other things that are much more opaque as to how you acquire those skills. So anyway, it's in its 3rd quarter now. People have given me, they've been very happy to have this in place, and we continue to evolve it and grow it.
Anybody else want to talk about mentorship programs that they have?
At Beachbody, we do have a mentorship program too. It's organized by the full department. and it's across the organization, like what you mentioned. And the other difference is also it's by choice, so it's not necessarily it's a mandatory thing. But they have mentors, like different leaders from the company. We have a speaker series, so they come and talk, and they talk about their career, how their leadership style, and then you can apply to be in the mentorship program. And there's a framework. Obviously, they will help you with the framework. Meet with them monthly or quarterly, and of course, these are VPs and above, so you have to work on the schedule and such. But it gives everyone an opportunity to find a mentor and go and talk to them and understand their leadership style and how they have achieved, and ask them questions. And of course, do a retro at the end of the quarter based on their progress and such. So it's very helpful. It gives everyone access to these leaders, and also and really get to know them and like their leadership style, how did they achieve it, and so on.
Carmen has a bit of a different take on mentorship.
They wouldn't have said it.
I think it's actually really interesting if you want to share.
No, I feel like a jerk.
A radical leader.
Well, not that radical. I don't like the mentor programs that I encounter in a lot of companies. But the reason for that is that I have seen some mentor programs that work extremely well, and I have always been there for people that ask if I would mentor them. I've never turned anyone down, but I said that earlier to Lacey. But some of the biggest bullies were in the mentor programs and applied to be mentors. Because they're the narcissists who go, I'm awesome, I'm the best thing since sliced bread. Everyone else should be like me, and hence I should be leading everybody, and I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna lead all of you. And I'd be sitting in the corner going, that one? That train wreck? And so I would walk out and go, I don't want to be part of this. And so I would do the rebel thing and say I don't want to be part of it. But I love what Lacey does. You know what, most companies, they do it right. I just have sometimes seen it go bad. I wouldn't have said it.
I did want to, at a related note, I was just going to say I think mentorship goes both ways, and I think feedback upwards, like from your employees about how you're doing, just as often as it goes the other way is really important. It's hard to do in an anonymized way. For example, if you have a team of 2 people. But ideally there's something like that in place, and I think that's really important, that there is a sense of like a conversation that goes both ways, and it's not one person like, I'm your boss and I'm going to evaluate you right now, and versus like, hey, how am I doing? Because we could all improve in leadership. It's like it's a growing skill all the time.
So I'm just curious, by a show of hands, how many people in the room have a mentor who's separate from their boss? Okay, it's still a pretty small percentage. So, and I'd love to give this anecdote on the mentorship front, because I was about 12 years into my career, in the space program, and I was at a conference, and there was this guy who was a very important guy, had some head role at NASA, giving his keynote address, and the keynote address was about like, when I was at this age, I had this mentor helping with this, and then a couple years later, I had this mentor connecting to this and connecting to that, and I had never had a mentor in those 12 years of my career, and so my career actually suffered quite a bit from not having a connection to that. And I checked my peers in my group at work, and all the males on the team actually were hooked up with mentors, but very few of us females, none of the females were. And so mentoring is really important if you select the right person yourself. They shouldn't be forced on you. I can't think of anything worse in that regard. But that person can help you on sort of a guttural level succeed in your career in so many different ways. So if you don't have one, the right thing to do is just to go out, find someone even on LinkedIn who is somewhat related to where you want to be in some dimension, and ask them, would you mentor me?
Please teach me corporate speak, because I'm German And I'm not just radically candid, sometimes I'm obnoxiously rude, and that does not get you very far, but I'm self-aware enough to understand that there is a different protocol in the United States. And I asked him yesterday, can you please teach me so I can be more effective instead of going in and saying, and you are a jerk. And there you go, thank you, Carmen. So I think for that reason, I always find people that really inspire. I'm just saying that sometimes the mentor programs are weird.
Well, so in closing, we'll open it up for Q&A, but this has been Women Leading Data, and we've talked about how to be a kick-ass boss, inspired by the book Radical Candor. I want to thank all of our speakers here. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about how they hire, we talked about how they interview, how they build their teams, we talked about how they manage and how they communicate. For me, the most insightful thing was just how to give criticism, because I often found myself being difficult for me to do that. I'm like, are you okay? Are you sure? You know, but being direct, it can be a little scary at first. And then building trust within your teams. All those takeaways for me have been fantastic. I really thank you for being part of this team, or this panel. Carmen, Lacey, Elizabeth, Anita, Aarthi, thank you so much. Yeah.
Robbing you of the microphone. We're going to open up for questions. We have a tad short of 20 minutes, so plenty of time for questions.